Drafting to win $300,000 and using the RotoViz tools. That is what we're doing today on the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast. It's myself, Colm Kelly. I'm joined by Conor O'Driscoll. Some people chase best ball tournaments. Conor O'Driscoll wins best ball tournaments. We've had our run-ins in the past, Conor. We've had our drafts together. We were lucky enough last year. I know you went a little bit closer on an individual team, but we had a co-managed team that we ended up finishing in the final, but we didn't get into the top end. We were, I think, 13th maybe is where we finished at the
end. To me, that's a good finish.
It's a good finish.
Obviously, a little bit of variance keeps us out of the big money.
Matthew Stafford.
We had a super strong team.
Matthew Stafford kept us out of the big money. We ran out of quarterbacks in the Superflex format. We made the final, but this is one where we're in the $125 tournament over at the FFPC. We will be drafting as we go through. We have drawn the 6th spot, so it's going to give us a good chance to work through the tools. For people interested in playing in it, it is $125, as I mentioned, to enter $300,000 top prize. Almost $1.5 million in total prizes. The thing I love about the FFPC is when you get to the playoffs, it's 12-team pods. 2 teams advance in week 14, 2 teams from the 12 advance in week 15, 3 teams advance from the 12 in week 16. It's an 87-person or team final for the $300,000 along with the other accumulation of prizes. So Conor won this tournament a couple of years back when myself and Sean Siegel with Blair Andrews had a co-managed team here on the RotoViz radio airwaves, and we managed to come in second place to Conor with some Monday Night Football drama back in that one. But Conor, we're going to use the tools, but we're going to get into that after we make the first pick. So I am going to share the draft board here. We are going to move into who we may select with our first pick here as it comes up. So the FFPC, people will see when I share the draft board, have made some, I think, pretty cool alterations to the page. It gives you the, the QB, RB, wide receiver, tight end build as you work through. A nice neat upgrade to the overall site platform. So Conor,
I'm used to having to count manually on FFPC.
Especially when you're also doing a podcast and you're trying to think, where are we at here? And I'm like counting through manually. So this is a nice update, maybe just specifically for us here today. But number 6, it's an interesting area. We've talked on RotoViz over the last number of weeks and months about the first round, potentially being up to 16 players deep. I joked with you before we got our draft slot that the 108 might be a nice spot because you're kind of guaranteed to get 2 of those 16 then. We're drafting now at the 6. So you're looking to get any player basically in that top tier of players you want, and then you're hoping you get the options back to you in the second round. But so far, Jamar Chase, Bijan, Brock Bowers, Saquon Barkley have gone off the board. One more pick before us. Jefferson or Lamb will be there. Potentially both of them will be there. But what direction would you like to play this out when we get to spot 6?
So I think I would have been pretty interested in Gibbs. It was down between Gibbs and Justin Jefferson for me. So Gibbs is gone. So for me, it's Justin Jefferson here.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is we do the draft. You can do the clicking. I like to let Sean do the clicking a lot of the time when we're drafting. So you can go over the Sean Siegel role.
I'm happy to click.
And you can do the clicking through. It will be interesting because this is a first point I guess we can jump into now. We take Justin Jefferson and we can pull up the RotoViz rankings here, and we're going off Sean Siegel's rankings up on the website here. When we look through that, it has Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1 as the 101, and we work our way through. Spot 6, it is given Jahmyr Gibbs as the running back 3 for the 106, but Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 2 at the 105, and Justin Jefferson is the 107, according to the way Sean has things set up here. We did mention in some DMs back and forth, with Malik Neighbors and potential injury situation, and that is, if we had a fully healthy Neighbors, is he as high as the wide receiver 2 for you, or is it a case that you have Jefferson as your wide receiver 2 here?
So Malik Neighbors, I think that's if you're assuming health, that's a fair spot for Malik Neighbors, given like how dominant he was with the targets and all that kind of stuff. You hope with the amount of QBs that they've brought in that they can settle on somebody who can do better than Daniel Jones was last year. But I guess his ADP is around pick. I think it's around pick 10, and I guess personally I have a lot of hesitancy about just being that aggressive on somebody where they're currently not practicing because of an injury.
The way I would look at these, and Sean would play these pretty similarly, where have them aggressively ranked, but then we're picking out the 106 today, so we're getting Justin Jefferson there. If we're drafting
Right.
at the 110, if we draw the 110 in a future draft, it's unlikely Justin Jefferson gets through. So I want to also play the game of this is the ADP and trying to balance it out. We're going to have quite a few drafts, Connor, in this particular contest, so we have the option of kind of balancing it out from that perspective.
I like to say I take the ranks seriously, but not literally.
Yeah, so we've kind of explained a little bit, but we're going to work through. So we're 2 picks away at the moment since we drafted Lamb, Neighbors, Ginty, McCaffrey, Trey McBride, Devon Aitken. Derrick Henry went at the 201. Then we have Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, 2 picks before us. I would like to, have seen, Lad McConkey goes as well. I would like to have seen Nico Collins potentially get back to us there. Lad McConkey would have been an option, but who, if they mix it one more pick here, would be an absolute steal, I think, would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's generally not coming back to this range. To pair him with a Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, this is a big fall for Amon-Ra, which is why I expect Seven to take him here.
Yeah, he went.
Timing.
Yeah, I did think that was likely. It would have been really nice to get him. The drafter there in the 7 gets CD Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that's a really strong combination together. Looking here at the wide receivers available, if we're looking to go in that direction, Drake London is the clear tier here of wide receiver for me. Jonathan Taylor is available, Bucky Irving. I do feel like Drake London would be a clear pick for me here.
Drake London is kind of that I guess bridge between what you're calling the 16-player first round and then the next tier. Like you'd rather have had Amon-Ra or Nico or something like that, but he's a fine bridge between that and the next grouping.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's if we're looking here, we'll go through the rankings in the ADP at the moment. ADP wise,
everybody else is drafting so quickly.
Yeah.
And like
the reason as well, for full transparency, the reason I was thinking we'll do the rankings, this question comes up a lot. How do you balance out the rankings, the ADP, and making your decision then, trying to play it out? And because we got the 106, I'm like, we're going to have plenty of time in between that there, 7 through, the 205 there. That was pretty rapid. It's a 60-second clock, but people really were happy to get their targets there. And Amon-Ra would have been very interesting, one more spot after. If we look at ADP, that's one spot after Drake London's ADP, but Amon-Ra usually goes at the 201. Lad McConkey's usually at the 211. So they went ahead of where they would regularly go. So we got a 1 pick versus a kind of 6 pick ADP fall. And again, would have been really nice to get that unique combination. I would say so far, Justin Jefferson, Drake London's probably a relatively attainable, pretty standard pairing. So when we look then back to the rankings and where Sean has these players ranked, Amon-Ra was his wide receiver 7 at the 201. So obviously we'd like to get that, but we are getting a little bit of a value on Drake London, 2 picks based on him being the wide receiver 9 and Sean's rankings. We are going to look now to the ADP though to see who we think may come back to us in this following round. George Kittle is one of my priority targets if it becomes possible to get him, but he goes at the 302, so I don't expect that to happen. For me, then it gets into the Rashee Rice, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyreek Hill territory. Is there any other players in the 3rd round there you'd be really hoping that makes it to us at this spot as JSN gets drafted?
Yeah, so Kittle, obviously huge priority target for us. That's very early for Marvin Harrison, which helps us. He's not a target for us in the 3rd round. I guess the other player that I would have some interest in is Chase Brown.
I like Chase Brown a lot, but I feel like we're getting pretty aggressive at the ADP here, and I kind of have preferred to play it through the Taj Brooks side. And there's some dynamics this year.
It would be at ADP.
He would be at ADP. What I mean by ADP is it's right at the top end of where kind of the expected outcomes that I have for him is. George Kittle.
You think he's overvalued, so you disagree?
I think he's right at value. I would rather get him though below ADP.
Okay.
And George Kittle did go to the drafter and tree who took Brock Bowers, so they have a Bowers.
So then, in terms of playing ADP, Tyreek Hill, so he's ADP 35.
Yep.
That's somebody else who I don't know. I don't like chasing his ADP. Like I don't want to head into the season with a big 40% bag of Tyreek Hill.
And are you?
And I feel like there's enough drafts where he slides where I can get a pretty healthy share without okay.
Well,
So
I don't. I'll make the
I
talk
think
through here.
we've avoided a pretty intense debate here, where between Chase Brown and Tyreek Hill, because Rashee Rice made it to us.
So are you on board with the Rashee Rice pick here? Because that is kind
Oh
of
yeah,
where I was leaning.
absolutely. Are you not?
No, I am, but I think this is going to be a fun point to like work through the whole rankings, the whole balancing act here of the different information. So let's take
Yeah,
Rice
yeah.
and make
So
the
obviously, Sean put these rankings out, I think in May. It's like a month ago. So sometimes when a player who I'm pretty sure he likes, and they have a big upward movement in ADP, that means that now he's actually ranked a good deal below his ADP. I kind of think, oh well, I bet when he updates it, he'll be ahead of ADP again.
Yeah, so to work through that, so in terms of the rankings, this is where it gets interesting. As T. Higgins has always been like one of my favorites, but this year I do have him behind Rashee Rice. So if we look at the ADP and how it's set up, Sean is very aggressive on Worthy. He's also very aggressive on Rice, but he has Rice in the kind of mid to late third and Worthy at the wide receiver 14 at the start. But when we look through the players that are available, the one that would have potentially been an option for us there would have been Tet McMillan. But Tet McMillan, then when we play up to the ADP, usually goes kind of around our pick in the 5th round. So it's that balance of like the rankings. Sean has him ranked in the 3rd round here, mid 3rd round. You can get him 2 rounds later. So it's a case of you want to have him on your radar now. You want to like be thinking if Rashee Rice had went, and then you're like, well, JSN's gone. Maybe you don't want to take T. Higgins. You're kind of balancing up then. Do you make that reach down? Maybe it's a time then to pivot to a different position to, let's say, a Jaden Daniels, who would be available at that range. But it's a case when we see the rankings, we see where McMillan is. It's like you don't have to take him in the 3rd. You're trying to make sure you get him on your roster, but you can take him in the 4th potentially. You might get him in the 5th. But the interesting part on the ADP side there is T. Higgins would have been a potential couple of pick value in the 3rd round. He goes at the 305 in general. Then it's Jaden Higgins at the 306. But Rashee Rice at the 307. I find the Rice steam is getting up there, but that is kind of where we had him ranked prior to the steam itself. So is that how you would play that out? I mentioned the McMillan mid 3rd value.
Yeah. So like you're saying, the information signal from the ranks on Tet is that Tet McMillan is that he's a very strong priority target.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody recommends that you have 100% share or near 100% share of a player this early. I guess any player, but particularly this early. And so you should really want him on your roster. But like you're saying, you play the ADP game.
And again, the other player
the other thing that I'm looking at here in this draft is that, so obviously we've gotten 3 wide receiver picks that we really like. It's RotoViz, so do like the strong wide receiver heavy starts. What I get a little bit nervous is when I'm just blasting receiver 5 straight picks.
Yeah.
And then I'm in that puts me in a situation where like I actually kind of need to take the other picks.
Yeah.
And so what I want to avoid is situations where I'm getting these great falling receivers and I have later on in the draft and I have to pass on them because I need other positions. So at this point, I would hope that we can draft another position.
Well, if I was picking my preferred options at this particular pick, and I don't think Jaden Daniels will make it 5 more picks, he's top of the queue by ADP. I would be open to taking a Jaden Daniels or Sam Laporta. They would be my preferred picks here.
Yeah, agreed. They're strong priority picks for us.
Yeah, so Daniels does go with the 403, a little bit of I mentioned he usually goes at the 3.6 in this format. So then that's allowing us to see him not slide to us, but he did slide to that particular drafter. He also got the little bit of a value on T. Higgins at that pick. Sam Laporta here would be like, to get what I still think is in the elite tight end here. And I think come on strong as he recovered from that injury through the midpoint of last season, would like to be able to see if we could add him in. And there'll be some players that can be fun at times. I'm sure as we go through this that will have different opinions to Sean's rankings, but he's a late third target here when we look at where Sean would have him ranked as the tight end 4. He is the tight end 4 by ADP, but a little bit later. And then we are looking at that point at, you could go to like a Jalen Hurts, but Amarian Hampton is an option there. Chuba Hubbard is in this range. But I have a strong preference towards Laporta, and then I would potentially even be thinking about a Hawkinson if that came to play at that particular area. Somebody Sean really likes as well is Travion Henderson. We like RJ Harvey. They're all potential availabilities, but we're one pick away. If we squeeze this Sam Laporta one through, it would set us up for a lot of flexibility as we work our way through the rest of the draft. Chuba Hubbard, Xavier Worthy, Jaden Daniels, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Josh Allen, the last kind of 6 picks or so. So Amarian Hampton goes, which leaves the runway clear here for Sam Laporta. Is that the pick you want to make?
Sam Laporta. It is tight end premium. We were kind of hanging out there without a tight end.
Yeah.
And so now we get to feel a lot better about our tight ends.
I do
I would have been stuck between Hampton and Laporta.
Okay.
I think he's a strong pick here in the 4th. But I would have if we were given a choice, I would have ceded to your preference there.
Yeah, so I do like some of the running back options in this range.
I want you to remember that now in the next pick when I watch somebody.
You'll know as we work our way through, we'll try and balance it out. We do this in all our drafts to see, if you get a lean, somebody else gets a lean. But I will remember that Hampton was already gone, so that wasn't.
Yeah, I'm trying to get credit.
Yeah,
for giving you something that I actually didn't have to.
So Sam Laporta, as I mentioned, the 310 and Sean's rankings as we work through, but he does have Marion Hampton as the 306 in his rankings. That's one spot after Ted McMillan, and McMillan may come up in conversation here again as we work our way through to the next pick, because when we switch over, and I'll a lot of interaction on this particular one, the audio listeners will have to just kind of bear with it, hopefully, but you will see McMillan now making his way up the list of potential options in the ADP queue. Devontae Smith is in here, Zay Flowers. There's a lot of names, Jameson Williams, but you do have some names like a James Conner, on Judkins. I think it's an interesting area of the draft. I find sometimes the 3rd and 4th round a difficult area to negotiate if the players you want aren't there. I don't have a huge range of targets in the 3rd and 4th, but I have lots in the kind of 5th through 8th that I like. McMillan does go at the 503. I mentioned again, when I pull up the ADP here, you'll see that he generally is going at the 506, so right in the range. So we again, you're playing it, if you're doing a lot of drafts, you're going to have opportunities in other drafts to be able to try and slide him in those particular ones. So now we have 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. I'm open here to stick in, and the main reason I was okay with pivoting to the tight end at the last round is to get the elite tight end, but we do have a lot of wide receiver potential options here. I'm going to let you pitch up. I see you have RJ Harvey in the queue. Is there any other player that you would differentiate for here? I'm good with the Harvey pick, but I just want to check to do the due diligence.
I'm curious on TJ Hawkinson as well. I think he's a solid pick for us. But
I think that taking Harvey does give a huge amount of flexibility as we work our way through the rest of it. For me, it'll be Harvey or Devontae Smith.
With the strength of, I'm going to take RJ Harvey here. With the strength of these kind of rookie upside picks in this range, like you have Hampton, you have Henderson, you have Harvey, you have Judkins. Like with the upside that you get there from that's really, really strong draft class, and maybe still this with the way running back ADP is working, maybe still discounted versus where they would have been in prior years. I have a really tough time not grabbing one of those players in that range, just because it's hard for me to see. It's hard for me not to see at least one of them being season defining.
And to jump into that, we take RJ Harvey now, so as we get to use the new graphics here on the FFPC website, we have 1 running back, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, but it's going to give a lot of flexibility. And Even if we're thinking of, people say it's a rookie, it can't really be, a hero RB build with taking a running back in the 5th, but I would kind of start to think of it in that particular perspective. But we've been able to really load up on wide receiver at the start, and we'll try and have our, 5 through 7 or 5 through 8 at the wide receiver position. But when we look at the ADP, the reason I like that pick and the wide receivers here, or running backs, in round 5, it's a Chuba Hubbard, RJ Harvey, Travion Henderson, James Conner range. When we get in then to, I'm okay with quite Sean Junkins, but it's David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Caleb Johnson in the 6th round. I'm kind of looking there at, moving into the wide receiver area, or maybe an Evan Ingram. And then when we work our way into the 7th, I kind of prefer all the wide receivers that go in that 7th range. So it kind of gives us the ability to not force a pick in those next 2 rounds to work our way beyond there. The other thing you mentioned, TJ Hawkinson, who I do like. The one thing with this, if you're picking kind of at that 6th spot, or really between, I think, 6 and 9, it's hard to get Brock Bowers or Trey McBride unless you take McBride, at that 9th spot. The 2nd round's not going to offer you much at the tight end position, but George Kittle, as I mentioned, probably not getting to you in the 3rd round. But if you look through the way the ADP sets up here, it kind of, if you want to get yourself one of those tight ends before TJ Hawkinson or before, I do think unless you're picking at the turn, there's enough flexibility to allow you to get one of them. Me and Sean drafted in a contest recently from the 12. It is quite tough unless you get McBride. We had McBride taken at the 110, I believe in that. And it can be quite hard then to get one of those elite guys. But if you're picking kind of from the 8 forward, I think you have opportunities at those to just plan ahead and see what direction you want to take it. I am interested to see
I'm interested in what you just said there. Are you saying that Sam Laporta and Hawkinson are cheap enough, basically, that even if you're not in like a normal ADP range to take them, that you can still prioritize them because you're getting the elite tight ends?
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is the way I don't know if it's the way you're phrasing it, but say if I'm picking, we know that Sam Laporta is going to go around the 407. If I'm picking there where James Cook's getting selected, I would rather take Sam Laporta at that point. But
yeah, I think that's what I said.
Yeah. But I think that if we look at Travis Kelce goes in this particular draft 3 picks after TJ Hawkinson, I think that Hawkins and then Evan Ingram goes 1 pick after that. Now, I do like Ingram's situation this year, but we're looking at a state there where I think TJ Hawkinson, and I mentioned that George Kittle is one of my biggest priority targets this year a moment ago. I think George Kittle or TJ Hawkinson is closer to George Kittle than Travis Kelce is to TJ Hawkinson. If we look at how the ADP is split, I think that TJ Hawkinson and Sam Laporta could go in the 3rd round, for example. And I think in this particular situation, you're kind of getting a round discount.
I think this pick is going to be tricky because as I look at the rankings, and I drafted with you to know enough to know that Jerry Jeudy is a massive priority for you.
Yeah.
And
who are you feeling here? I'm finding it tough to get on board with Waddle. I mentioned I'm not all that pushed on Caleb Johnson. Jordan Addison, Chris Olave.
Yeah, I'm having a tough time as well. I would probably throw out Mahomes, given that we have Rashi, but I'm okay with Jerry Jeudy. I won't have very much of him this year.
Okay, well, if you're not going to have much, I'll have plenty. I would go Ben Gretsch. We did a show last week. He kind of talked me in a little bit into the Chris Olave situation again, based on the target. We did get into a kind of a flatter area. I like Jeudy. I thought maybe by the way you were mentioning it, maybe you're not as positive. Let's hear look through rankings versus ADP. Sean has him in the 5th round, wide receiver 26, just before Jameson Williams. We take him on that particular pick at the 607. So we take Jerry Jeudy right around ADP there. We got into kind of a flatter area when we looked through the potential picks available. The player that I was thinking about kind of pitching up to you was potentially Chris Olave. He might be there at the next pick. Myself and Ben Gretsch had a conversation last week where we talked through it, and he kind of talked me around a bit. And I have been a big Olave believer. Has been going in the 2nd or 3rd round the last couple of years. Does get drafted at the 702, as I started to mention it. But obviously, there's a lot of concerns with his concussions, the quarterback situation, the team environment. But you're looking at a player then when you're in the 7th round who's, I think, ticketed in for at least 100 targets or more this season. So he gets interesting there. We did add Judy, so we're 3 picks away. Connor, who are you kind of looking through here with the potential names? Jordan Addison is somebody who, again, I like to draft, but the likely suspension. I do feel the suspension is priced in at this price. I think if he gets suspended, it probably does drop even after this. But I think I'm comfortable at this price. Taking him in this range.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the price too. Look, there he goes. The other player that I'm strongly interested in is Jonnu Smith.
This draft was recorded prior to the Jonnu Smith trade, so there'll be some conversation coming up here around Jonnu Smith and his selection. Our thoughts have obviously changed on that since the move to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The conversation around the tight end premium and how to target tight ends in this format remains the same, so we've left that in there. So we will be picking Jonnu Smith here, but just a note to say that was prior to the trade. We are 1 pick away. Jonnu Smith is an option. The other players by ADP would be David Montgomery, Chris Godwin, Jonnu Smith, Tony Pollard, Mark Andrews, Baker Mayfield, Pacheco, Deebo Samuel, Njoku, Brian Robinson, Khalid Shakir, Jalen Warren. I'm kind of looking at this area, and I feel like it's like a case of it's like Jonnu Smith, David Njoku, or else you're getting down to Jalen Warren at that particular point.
You mean we're on the clock? I think we're both strongly agreed on Jonnu.
Yeah.
And part of why we're both on the same mind in that is that he is highly ranked. He's ranked above here where he's going. But one of the other kind of big structural considerations for FFPC is that you want tight end firepower. You really, really want that because it's tight end premium. Like it just adds such an advantage to them. And then I think the other thing that goes more under the radar is because of the roster settings where you have 2 flex spots, the ability to play 3 tight ends. Like you can play 3 tight ends, 4 receivers, 4 running backs with the way the flex spots work.
Yeah.
And like it makes tight end a lot closer to these other positions, which I don't think people fully consider. A lot of people look at tight end as like, hey, it's kind of like underdog, except they score a little bit more points. Yeah. It's not. It's a big difference.
And especially for the guys who may get, like, say, you'll have some players where that may factor in if you're like a 3 catches for 40 yards and maybe a touchdown here and there. But if you're somebody like a Jonnu Smith who last year, and this may not continue fully through this season, was getting 8-9 receptions a game. Like some of these guys, like let's say you go to Trey McBride's in the first round, but if you get a week where a Jonnu Smith catches, like there was weeks last year where some of these guys caught 10 balls, well, it's 1.5 points PPR. So before you add, yards or touchdowns, you're at 15 points already. And when you look at the flex spot, like, and Connor will be able to say this, in the times we've had teams that have had a lot of success, there's quite often 2 to 3 tight ends in those lineups that are putting up high teens into the mid-20s as your second tight end option. The weeks where you have 2 tight ends that actually hit, who are in this kind of, we have 2 tight ends out of the top 8 here, the tight end 4 and the tight end 8. But the weeks that they potentially get you 27 to 30 points, both of them, they'll be outscoring other teams' quarterbacks in those particular weeks. And it can give just a massive advantage in the tight end premium format. But that was a good reference to go into the scoring with the 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, plus the tight end, then the flexes, and then the 1 quarterback, obviously. And the tight end, I think, can become very overlooked. Like if you look at the team in 3 at the moment, they took Brock Bowers, George Kittle. I wouldn't necessarily be looking to draft much Kelsey at all this year. But the team in 12, they have drafted Travis Kelsey, Evan Ingram. Looking through that team, I was going to say after those 2 picks, I was kind of intrigued to see what they do moving forward. That's a team that has started with two running backs followed by Josh Allen, followed by running back, tight end, running back. So they had no wide receivers through 7 rounds with 4 running backs, kind of the antithesis maybe of the opposite of what we're doing here. So we are now 2 picks away. Connor, have we got more appetizing, interesting, tastier looking options here at this next pick? We're back up on the clock.
So we're back on the clock, and I think our options are between, say, a Jaden Reed and maybe Bo Nix, given where we are in ADP and who our targets are, and we do have that correlation between Harvey and Nix.
Yeah, so
my
go
kind of
ahead.
thought would be take Jaden Reed, because
I would take Reed here, and the reason for now, this could obviously not work. The team in the third spot has no QB, but they do. All the other teams between us and the wraparound have a QB, so there's a chance that QB dips a little bit. It would be nice to have the correlation between Harvey and Bo Nix, but it's not essential for me. And I do think we start to get to a wide receiver, cliff here.
Right. And I think the way that what the rankings kind of reflect is that Jaden Reed, I talked about in Drake London as that kind of transition piece between the first and the second round value pieces. Jaden Reed is kind of one of the transition receivers between strong quality receivers and then really having to tell yourself a story.
Yeah, so he is Sean's wide receiver 34 in the rankings in the middle of round 6. We draft him there in the middle of round 8. And that's kind of like, again, you're not looking to draft him in the 6th round. You're looking to get him at ADP. He is going right there as wide receiver 43 at the end, mid to end off the 8th. So we take him like 2 picks ahead of ADP. But again, planning out your draft, working back to front, trying to get through, each round. And really what I do with the rankings when we work through our own rankings is, have the ADP board that I'm showing here on the screen and work your way kind of back to front. How can you pin this roster together? And basically the ones that are well ahead of ADP, double circle them, for example, or double highlight them. So you're like, that is a priority target, and think of it that way as you're trying to balance it. Because you want to not just be aggressively picking all the players ahead of ADP, but if you get to flat zones, you can certainly make that reach. A player that, we take a Packer there in Jaden Reed. I do think Tucker Kraft in this area can be quite interesting. Now, I would have preferred him, in the 9th round, but he goes at the 8-11. I think he's in a kind of interesting place because I feel that the Packers are going to be much more back in the passing mode this year. And again, one of the reasons I'm not necessarily overly concerned if we were to miss out on a Bo Nix, there is a lot of options as we work our way through it here. Jordan Love would be somebody who I would also be intrigued by. He's currently at ADP by the 11th round. So I think when you do the 1v1s of being able to get Bo Nix or Jaden Reed versus, Jordan Love versus, let's say, Brandon Ayuk, for example, I would much rather do it in this reverse order and see if we can do it that way. So we are working our way back again. Cooper Kupp, Najee Harris go at the turn. I'm pretty strong here, though, as we work our way through and look at like optimizing the roster. 1 running back, 5 wide receivers, 2 tight ends through 8 rounds. I'm pretty comfortable in general with that being the type of build that I would be looking to draft in this particular contest. Is that, if you're drafting solo and you're not having me whisper in your ear, is that the way you'd be looking to play it as well?
Yeah, this is pretty close to how I play as well. Do like having our 5th receiver when you see Jaden Higgins come off the board, because he's very often when I have pushed receiver, he's kind of one of my rescue picks.
I do like Higgins a lot, but Higgins is the wide receiver 53 by ADP going in the 12th round, 1201. So like, again, a player who Sean has ranked in the 7th round. So by rankings, you're getting a discount. But in terms of like that drafter, unless we took him in the 10th, is probably getting him in the 10th round, may have been able to go in a slightly different direction. We are 1 pick away. The 2 New York Giants running backs have gone off the board back-to-back. RB, Cam Scalabo, Tyrone Tracy. That could have been one we got into a conversation about which one we wanted. Interesting here, though, if we do get one more spot, Bo Nix is potentially still available after we talked about it. A lot of quarterbacks in this range. I think Jordan Mason's a very interesting running back option. For me, by ADP, they're probably the 2 options, and you're getting that bit of a discount if we look the way of.
So we do get Bo Nix swinging back around.
Yeah, are you strong? Have you any feelings towards the Mason selection? That you could start to stack up Minnesota, but I'm not.
I don't know. I think Mason is a fine pick. I don't think he's somebody who I'm heavily targeting.
Yeah, I'll let you push on this. If we're going by the rankings conversation, Sean has a slightly better value on Bo Nix than Jordan Mason, both 8th round value when we look into that. So you are at the control. I allowed you to have that privilege at the start here. You can make the click. I do think Jordan Mason behind and Aaron Jones is one where there's an interesting pivot point on how that offense could go in Minnesota. If we look here at the rankings, Bo Nix QB7 for Sean, Jordan Mason RB32, but both in the 8th round, about 6 picks apart. Matthew Golden did go just before our last pick. Josh Downs was just after it. Both of those are players I'm interested in, particularly Downs here as we approach a potential Daniel Jones-led Colts team. I guess I'm always open to pushing quarterback further and further down the board. You mentioned Mahomes earlier, and obviously you get Mahomes, you could stack him with Rashee Rice. I'm just like always kind of thinking that unless you're getting Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, maybe I would put Josh Allen into that. I feel like I would rather then wait. But at least we waited, that extra round.
I think we did wait. We got some decent value on Bo Nix. I agree with you that when you're not talking about the elite guys, after those guys are gone, you do want to be pushing him. And I think that's kind of most clear when you're talking about this kind of pocket in between the elite guys and the mid-tier. And the obvious example is Joe Burrow going in the 5th round, where he's just getting all the way sucked up when he's a lot closer to these kind of normal pocket passers than he is.
I think almost if you think of it as like I talked through the tight ends, and I said I thought that the likes of Laporta and Hawkinson are closer to a George Kittle. I think what you're saying basically is the tight end the quarterback is the opposite of that, where some of those QBs are getting pulled up. We did get just short of a round of value there on Bo Nix, which I think is beneficial. I tend to play quarterback like that, where I'm trying to push it around the corner.
Yeah.
We do obviously now have
I agree. Yeah. I think you have to be a little bit more careful on FFPC than Underdog. My experience on FFPC is that the quarterback positional runs can be pretty relentless. I'm told that on Underdog, positional the draft room is a little bit more sanguine about quarterback, and people are just willing to kind of push. But FFPC, you get a quarterback run, and that whole middle tier just got wiped out, and you're left trying to piece together your quarterback room.
Yeah, and that's always is the part of like trying to be aggressive and push the draft in certain ways. Like we mentioned Jordan Mason, ETN, Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet have gone off since we picked. We have 2 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, both went off the board. But when we look through, sometimes we'll push running back. We mightn't have had RJ Howard, but we try and push again. You miss out on Jordan Mason. Then you're really like in round 10 and you're like, well, we have some decisions to make. But I still think we have quite a good bit of flexibility here as we move forward. But QB, there's quite a stack of them at the top of the board. So for us over this next little bit, it'd be good to see those going off the board. I do feel like this isn't a prime area for a running back selection. Stevenson, Tootin, Spears, Blue, all available here. Have you a preference out of those guys?
Of those, I'm probably between Tootin and let me see who else. And Spears. It's a small bit of a ADP reach, but I'm just okay with that because I think that we kind of do need to keep up at running back as well.
Yeah, I think Tootin's the pick. I think there's a chance that one of the other 2 come back to us in the next round. I would like to see if we could swing 2 of these names. Now, Tootin could slide based on some of the reports coming out with some issues in training camp so far. But if we look, I
feel like those are kind of factored in right now.
I do. He's going at the last pick of the 10th round. In general, we take him there mid 10th. I mentioned the other players, Tyjae Spears going in the 11th round over the last couple of days. We have Tyjae Spears, Jaden Blue going at the back end of that. So one of those I think should come back through to us for that next pick. The other pivot point I would have when we get to that is like, do we want to see about a Jordan Love potentially at that pick, or do we want to continue to move things down? The other QB, and this is kind of the reason where we take the next pick, and I'm happy with the next pick, but I'm talking about Jordan Love. We're going to have an option here to potentially take Jared Goff, who hasn't gone yet. So you do get into a spot where you have some interest in stacking options with the names we have on the roster already. And that's where sometimes you want to push it. But the part where the Bo Nix pick makes sense, as I mentioned, you either have to look there and take Jordan Mason and then get your quarterback, 2 rounds later, or you're getting your quarterback there and then you're trying to get 2 running backs after. Basically, you're trying to come out of those 3 rounds with either 2 quarterbacks or 2 running backs, but a combination of both as we work our way through there. So,
and the other way that I look at our Bo Nix pick is that after we took him, you have Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, Justin
we forced a little run there.
Yeah, but that may have happened even if we hadn't done it, and you can argue that, let's say, Jared Goff would have still been there, and maybe we still would have been okay.
Yeah, and Goff is the one that could have potentially went there. And it'll be interesting. Like, Goff is not getting past the 7 drafter if we don't take him here at this next pick, because he is a CD Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown team. So he did take Dak Prescott with that last one to go with Lamb. So I would imagine there's a chance there that he's, eyeing up that. I mentioned it's probably going to be a rare enough combination to have Lamb and Brown. I think it's going to be very rare to have both of them on the same roster and both of them stacked. So we'll see what happens over the area here. It's quite interesting to see quite a few of the teams have been able to pair some of those stacks together. The Kittle drafter took Brock Purdy there at that last selection. So teams setting up, and I mentioned the team in 12. They now are a 6 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 quarterback, 2 tight end build. So we'll have a look to see what they do with the wide receiver room as they work their way through the back end of this draft. Drake May selected by the drafter who took Purdy there along with George Kittle. We are 2 picks away. Mentioned the options. Tajay Spears did get selected. Jaden Blue would probably be the priority here if we went to running back. But then I did mention those QBs. Is there any of the QBs that you'd be tempted to take over a Blue in terms of the way you would have them ranked here?
So I'm not particularly interested in Blue.
Okay.
I forgot to mention it before the show when we talked about it briefly, but I don't like the news reporting on Blue is extremely not favorable.
Yeah, at the moment it's a little bit negative,
and I don't see that as being priced in here.
Okay.
Where the team is saying he might make the team as their kind of change of pace. Space back, he might, but to
anything
me,
I've seen so far, it seems like he's certainly making the team. It just depends on how much of a factor he's in there.
Sorry, game day roster.
Yeah,
might make the game day roster. Will make the team. Is not sure to make the game day roster. And
so with that thought in mind, I would be kind of probably looking down to a Luther Burton. The reports haven't all been favorable for either. But the draft pick before us was Kyle Pitts, one of our OGs. But we do have Jared Goff, Jordan Love. The reason I would be a little bit okay if we did want to pass would be the fact that we also would have potentially JJ McCarthy to go along with.
We certainly have outs at quarterback.
But I don't necessarily see
unless after QB is just reach all the way down the board.
Yeah,
I think we're better off just taking the quarterback.
And which quarterback would be the preference here for you?
I think it's Jared Goff for me. But if you were strongly Jordan Love, I would be okay with that.
Not strongly. I think that he's underpriced, and I think that the Packers rebound towards the pass, and he's healthier this year. But I would. Based on the kind of certainty of that offense being in that direction. I feel sorry for the draft at 7. Sorry if he's a listener, but I really didn't want to give up that if that was something that they were wanting to do. Maybe they would have went Darnell Mooney anyway, but I also don't want to give like a huge correlation advantage to another drafter in the room, as well as looking at the bigger picture for the competition.
Sorry, explain. You wanted to do Darnell Mooney to
No, the drafter after us was the drafter I mentioned that had the CD Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown team. So
okay. And
I didn't want to give the first and second round wide receiver picks both stacked to that drafter in 7. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm not usually thinking of drafts in terms of like what I can deny the other drafters.
Not generally myself, but I think that was a little bit much. That to pair CD Lamb, Amon Ra, which is like
I get you.
Start.
Where to get a rare pairing, and then they get to stack it too.
Yeah, and if we talk about players, like we talk about, potentially targeting, like through those 4 rounds, like they've Chase Brown, they got a slight discount. They have Hampton, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton. I can pass on that, but like they have Josh Downs, who they just were putting together. David Njoku. They have an interesting team that they were putting together. So
no, they do have an interesting team. They do have an interesting team.
I'm not
so
usually.
I guess as I look at our team,
the other one point I would make on that is the pick worked favorably for our team and was, a good pick. Like the pick itself that we made wasn't
right. It stood on its own.
Yes, but it also protected us. The tiebreaker for me was to protect us from, a potential, couple of point miss out throughout the course of the whole season.
Makes sense. So as I look at our team, one thing I noticed, so we have RJ Harvey, and the way we built here is that we're kind of needing RJ Harvey to hit the ground running a little bit.
Yep.
Then Tootin, we kind of understand at this point that there's a very realistic risk that he may not hit the ground running, and that we may not be able to rely on him in the early weeks of the season.
Yep.
So as I look and think about our the rest of our picks at running back, our 2 starting running backs are rookies.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Now, I'm less concerned about the first couple of weeks of the season and them being rookies, but I also think that we can backfill this team, and I think it'll be a case that like a lot of rookies, but we'll end up being able to see some of them get early season work. It won't be a case that they all don't. And I do feel like RJ Harvey is a very secure rookie for week 1. I'm not overly concerned about early season work, like having zeros from RJ Harvey to start the season. We have seen it is the QB window. We've seen a big run on quarterback. We're back up. Stafford and Stroud went with those last 2 picks. Question I would have is, I think we're set up here for a potential 2 quarterback build. Jordan Love did make it all the way back around. We'll see what happens over the next, but you have Ramondre Stevenson in the queue, and I think that like talking through that part of the early season part and getting the discount here on Stevenson, I think that all pairs together pretty perfectly to add him as the next running back. Season long, I'm not overly optimistic, but kind of that bridge running back to get us through those opening weeks. I think that's a smart play.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. And I like that you noted the availability of Jordan Love too. He would have been a great pick for us as well. And he goes immediately. I kind of saw him as a little bit more as a luxury pick.
Yeah,
it's a good luxury pick, but I think our team actually did need Ramondre.
I think for the overall build, I think that's a pivot point we'll come back to at the end of the show. Like if we look at how our draft came out, the one I would look at there is like, was there a case that, we can look at this at the end, like would we rather have, and it's tricky on this team because it's an RJ Harvey team. If we didn't have RJ Harvey, we probably would have skipped on Bo Nix, obviously. But in that situation, J.K. Dobbins was the running back that went, after Jared Goff that I thought would be interesting, but doesn't really fit the kind of upside play that you want to have in a competition like this where you're hoping RJ Harvey's just the star come the end of the season. So I was kind of working through, J.K. Dobbins and Jordan Love versus Jared Goff and Ramondre Stevenson. But when you're playing for the team to have as much success as possible, I do think that the way we have done it has worked out favorably. The Jordan Love pick does go the way of the Matthew Golden drafter. So we have a stack there as well. I feel like when we're looking at quarterback, like we mentioned, we got the round discount on Bo Nix. I do feel like, from round 9 through round 14, there's just so many interesting options. Like Drake May went to the Brock Purdy draft, but Cam Ward also went to that draft. But Jared Goff, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, even Matthew Stafford, JJ McCarthy, potentially even Trevor Lawrence. I just think they're all mispriced by a couple of rounds, and they're kind of been selected in the way that we want to build these teams in the quarterback window. So it makes it very hard, although I like, the elite QBs that I mentioned earlier, it makes it hard for me to draft them unless it is a complete flat point off the draft. So we are going to be picking now again.
The last couple of years, you've had a lot of ADP sets where the quarterbacks are very tightly priced.
Yeah.
Where even if you're a little bit uncomfortable with paying up for the elite quarterback, it's a high price up and down the board.
Yeah.
Where it is interesting that you like I mentioned, Joe Burrow, who just had a really strong season as kind of a pocket passer. You have the high price in him, but then you have this collection set of pretty well discounted pocket passers.
Yeah.
Who may not have had the strongest year last year, but I mean, pocket passers, if they're any good, have it in their range to put up strong seasons.
Yeah, we are one pick away. We are probably looking here. We could potentially go running back again. By ADP in the queue, it's Isaac Guerrero, Rashad White, Geno Smith, Ray Davis, Tank Bigsby, Bryce Young, Zach Ertz, Hollywood Brown, Trey Harris, Sam Darnold, Tyler Algier, Jalen Wright, Marvin Mims. It is not the most appetizing area of the draft, but the player that I would say is the most intriguing for me here, he does last our pick if you want to agree with me, it is Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills. Have you another name before I go into Ray Davis to talk about him?
No. I Ray Davis is who I was looking for too. I think he's very interesting as well.
Yeah, I think again, if we start to look at like big gap running backs, and when I say big gap running backs, it's an ADP. Ray Davis in this particular draft now, we have taken him in the mid 13th round. James Cook went at the 402. We, some potential contract issues with James Cook in that, and Ray Davis has shown in flashes so far. I think he's a fine kind of zero RB build sort of profile, and he, like, when we get into that area, there's only a couple of names to me. I'm looking at the running backs here, but he's a priority target. But I am also looking at a lot of the QBs, like Bryce Young has just gone 2 picks before Geno Smith goes in this range. They are kind of the players that I'm kind of looking at here. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. So with that now, Connor, our build, thanks to the updated graphics over at the FFPC, shows us we have 2 QBs, 4 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. We just have a huge amount of flexibility the rest of the way now as to how we build out this roster. I do think, again, when we look at the players we've drafted, Tootin, I feel week 1, it's hard to say that there's complete standalone value there. RJ Harvey, I feel there's standalone value. Stevenson, I think there'll be points in week 1. And I do think Ray Davis will be factored in along with James Cook, even if James Cook has everything tied up, contract-wise. If there's a case that something happens with the James Cook situation and he doesn't come in, Ray Davis is
he plummets. He soars in value.
If we get a situation there's a holdout, like he's a 5th round pick, but that may not happen. But I think, again, standalone value with the profile that's there. Guerendo's interesting as well, obviously behind Christian McCaffrey, who goes in the 1st round. Rashad White is behind Bucky Irving, who goes in the 2nd. I'm going to find it hard to click that button on White, though, as the efficiency kind of continues to plummet. But we took Jaden Reed at the 807, wide receiver 43. That was our 5th wide receiver. I do think you want to be up to 5 at least through 8, if not through 7. And then we've been able to backfill the running back position so far. This is a 20 round of drafting. There's going to be a lot of late rookie running backs that I really like in this format. I do think it'll be interesting to see if there's any wide receivers that pop up here, maybe that goes with a Bo Nix, maybe a Pat Bryant. But is there anybody, we're looking here at 2 QBs. Do you like to add a 3rd quarterback in this format, or do you want to sit on 2 unless something dramatic happens?
I'm always open to the 3rd quarterback, but I'm always happy to stand on 2 as well, especially when you hit 2 in the window. But if we get a falling quarterback who's stacked, I'll always happy to add that.
Yeah, I do think like Penix is somebody who, with a Drake London, you'd be interested, but he went in the 13th round there. Like Bryce Young, somebody I would take if he's fallen down there. But I think we're going to be in a situation where we may end up being a 2 QB build, but that's going to let us have flexibility elsewhere. We took the 2 tight ends in the opening 7 rounds. I would still like, if we could, to potentially get up to 4 in this format. We have a couple of rookies. I'm sure as we work through, we'll talk about those. There'll be quite a lot of rookie picks here in these last number of picks. And I know we took quite a few rookies so far, but that's probably the way it'll continue.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we're happy to have taken Ramondre. We're happy to have taken Ray Davis. And I assume we're going to be happy to have taken Tyler Algier here.
Is that your recommendation as we're on the clock, Algier?
Yeah, that's who I would take. Again, you're talking about a little bit of standalone value. And then as we look to the end of the draft and we start wanting to fill out rookies, we're able to pair those rookies with just a little bit of floor at running back, so that when they do come on, I guess later in the season, that we're not completely playing catch up. And it's just fuel to the fire.
Have you any interest in Marvin Mims at this pick or no?
Not really. Do you?
I think if it was solo, probably would, like, it's between those two guys. Braylon Allen would come into it for me a bit as well, but I'm okay if you. I think there's a lot of rookie options that I like later on. Whereas when we're working through these rounds, I think if we're looking, and I would like to get at least one more wide receiver, if not two. That was the question I was going to do.
Yeah. I normally target at least 7.
Yeah, and see, I would be kind of looking if we were able to, accentuate the stack with Bo Nix. It really means now that we're kind of looking to see. Well, you could potentially go with a Franklin, but you're kind of looking at Pat Bryant or nothing, and it could be a situation then where you just. I guess what I'm saying is I'm
not completely convinced that that the likes of Troy Franklin and Valet and Pat Bryant are entirely different from Mims, where
maybe not.
As Sean Payton insisted, he was still very much a role player in their offense who did have big plays because he is talented.
But did really come on in that last quarter of the season very strong, was used as a main.
Well, he had the big Week 17 game as he caught 2 bomb touchdowns, but
yeah,
that's kind of been his profile, where he doesn't play that much, but he does catch bombs.
But he had been starting to be used. I guess if you said the Deebo Samuel role, a lot more passes, get the ball in his hands along the line of scrimmage, and that is an area where he has also excelled. Not necessarily though saying that Marvin Mims is the key pick to hold this all together. It's more so when I look at rounds 14 through 20, I probably have 6 wide receivers that I actually want to draft. So I would be looking at Mims as one of those potential options. It's more so now you could get kind of completely boxed out of the position, would be more the way I would be kind of looking through wide receiver from this point. So I would have been okay there to go the other direction and to, I guess what I'm saying is I have more late round running backs that I like than late round wide receivers.
So here's a question: what percentage, as I look on the RotoViz NFL Stats Explorer, what percentage of the snaps, overall team snaps, do you think Marvin Mims played in Week 17?
Let's guess 70%.
47.
Yeah, 47 is not many.
No, so that I don't want to get kind of too tied to the what you call that, to the points that he got in Week 17, which was very memorable, and I think we used that. We may have used that score.
Yeah, we did.
So very, very
maybe that's why I remember
that very
more
strongly
fondly
too. But why can't that guy be Troy Franklin this year?
Because Troy Franklin gets overthrown by 2 fingertips on every pass from Bo Nix. And if they're on target, he did catch the one against the Bills in the playoffs. I guess we'll give him that. But yeah, again, it's not necessarily that Mims is the guy. It's more about if your path gets cut off to having the other options that we work through. So we are going to be coming up here in 3 more picks. This is an area now when I get into round 15 where I'm more wanting to just get the players that I want to get. I mentioned potentially Braylon Allen at that last pick, but I do feel seeing here what maybe becomes available at tight end as we work our way through it. Have you any priority picks, in these last rounds? Like if I'm sitting now, running backs that I like moving forward, and Braylon Allen's in that, but it's Marshawn Lloyd, Jarquez Hunter in this next kind of 2-round stretch. And I like Jatavion Sanders as well at the tight end position. They're kind of the names that I would be specifically looking at here. I can be talked into other
I
names,
like Dylan Sampson a lot.
Okay.
He was a really strong. I'm not necessarily I'm actually not advocating to take him here.
Okay. Why not?
So we did talk about wanting to get to 4 tight ends.
Yep.
And we do have a bit of a faller here, a tight end who is a starter. I know the floor is not necessarily great, or the ceiling is not necessarily great, but this is a pretty nice value on K. Dotton.
I'm usually the person like touting that people should think about drafting K. Dotton, but I also think if you're like interested in Sampson, that would probably be a direction. Who's the tight ends? Like, see, in terms of the rookie tight ends, are you in on Sanders? Are you in on Ferguson?
I'm fine. Fannin is the guy who's kind of
he's another one that I would like, and I guess I would take the risk here if you want to take if Sampson's one of your guys, I would take the risk and take him versus taking Auden.
He is somebody I like a lot, but there's so many running backs late that I like that I'm fine just taking the risk that he's.
But we don't really want to get to 5 tight ends, do we?
Oh, you're gonna make me take Tree Moore even if we take Auden. You're like
not make you, but
okay, we can do Sampson, but let the record show I wanted to do Auden there.
Okay, we'll let the record show. I guess like Auden is going to get enough work in the Tampa Bay offense, but there is like we're talking about like the players that are starting to get squeezed, and Jill McMillan went 1 pick ahead of us, and then you get like Ibuka there. You're going to get Chris Godwin. You're going to get Mike Evans. Like there was part of
they
what he was getting.
A strong receiving core.
But some of the success that he had was kind of also tied in, I think, to the injury situation.
That was definitely why he was. I think he was projected really strongly in stretches this year, but I don't think the price here is necessarily reflecting like contingent upside for K. Dotton. That it's not he's not priced here as if that's just going to happen again. It's tight end premium. He's just like a true starting tight end with no tight end pressure. I mean, maybe they use more 4 receiver sets, and he's some kind of 60% share guy. But I do think that's like well reflected in the price there.
Yeah. I kind of think what my fear is kind of playing out. So we take Dylan Sampson, Marshawn Lloyd, Braylon Allen, Jarquez Hunter have like all gone after that. So my fear there, Connor, was we would take K. Dotton, we'd miss out on a lot of the running back priorities we had. And then, what I was saying about what we get back to the next round and Jatavion Sanders is there. We get back in the next round, Terrence Ferguson's there. So I do think that taking Sampson there, like I would have been open to the other running backs as well. In case there's a tiebreaker later, I give you Dylan Sampson there. Sampson is somebody who's interesting. I want about again the gap in ADP between him and Judkins in terms of where they go in drafts. Judkins went in the 5th round of this one. We get him in the 15th to 10 round gap. Both rookies, obviously. It's not like one was an undrafted rookie and the other one, was the 101. So it's interesting to see how that'll develop over the course of the season. But I was a little bit afraid, I guess, of missing out on that rookie tier of running backs, plus Marshawn Lloyd I would include in there. Obviously a second-year player, but missed the majority of the first year for taking K. Dotton. So I'm hoping that maybe it'll reflect positively when it gets back all the way around here, and we'll see how the end of the draft finishes out. Looking at ADP again, somebody we kind of talked about before, I wouldn't be taking him unless he's a faller, but Colm goes in this range of tight end. Jatavion Sanders, who we mentioned a few times already, who I think was off to a nice run prior to his injury that kept him out. I think he's very interesting again. This year, we're one pick away. I do think
we're getting squeezed here at tight
pick.
ends. So,
well, I would say we're getting squeezed by players that I'm not necessarily wanting to draft. So I would be open.
No, that's fine. But like, even if we're not wanting to draft them, it narrows the pool what other people can pick.
But this for me is the tight end pick. Like I think this is like Jatavion Sanders. And now, if you want to go Komet, that's fine. Jatavion Sanders.
No, it is. I'm happy with Jatavion here.
And the reason,
what I meant when I said we're getting squeezed was that what I meant was if we pass on the tight end here, because we've had 3 tight ends go since our last pick.
Yep.
If we like Jatavion and we want to take him, that because a bunch of tight ends have gone, we're that much less likely to get him on the way back. So
but when we're on the clock, we are able to draft one of them, which we did.
Yeah.
So I guess what I was saying, kind of tongue in cheek, K. Dotton, I would pick. Theo Johnson's a little bit interesting. Tyler Higbee, I'm not drafting. So I guess you could say we're getting squeezed, but I would class getting squeezed if that was Terrence Ferguson and Jatavion Sanders that went in those 2 picks. So we do have DJ Giddens to pick after Jerome Ford, Will Shipley. They're kind of, for me, picks that I would be interested in that next pick if they had to come back to us. But no, I'm like, and here I guess is the question on the, like, would you rather K. Dotton, and I don't know which of those 3 running backs would be your preference, if maybe Giddens or Shipley, maybe Ford, but would you rather have Otten in one of those or Sampson and Sanders? I think the answer is pretty clear there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't think that 2v2 is like, if you had it done, let's say Otten and Shipley or Otten and Giddens, I think that still would have been pretty close.
It would be close.
I get what you're saying.
It could be close come season's end, but the part I'd be looking at too is, the potential ceiling for Otten versus Sanders. Now, I do agree we could have a situation where Kate Otten has a safer floor and gets 120 season-long points, but you could also have the situation where Jatavion Sanders has a real true breakout season, and then next year has been picked in the 7th round as the Panthers become a better offense again. Like, I'm trying to get the player who's could have that true breakout season, rather than like Kate Otten's breakout was last year. And I think if he hits what he did last year, this year, that would be a success for him, rather than, truly take the roof off.
Right. No, last year was a good season, but I actually, and I guess shame on me, I haven't seen the strong breakout case for Jatavion Sanders this year. But you clearly feel encouraged by it.
I liked him as a rookie coming in, and obviously he was paired last year in a situation with a real struggling situation when we got to the QBs, that they were paired with, who weren't all that optimistic about Bryce Young and his kind of redemption. But like, he's 22 years old, like he's younger than a lot of the rookies in this particular class, and he had success in 2024. Was starting to get used a lot more, and I guess I'm saying a lot more, but for a rookie tight end, getting the targets and the receptions that he was prior to the injury that he had, I think there's like a floor there, but there's also a ceiling, and the athletic profile is like one that has elite tight end upside. Now, I'm not saying he's going to fit in and become George Kittle, but he does have a profile, and can have be dangerous after the catch, and that for a tight end that you're taking in the 16th round, I think he's in that Terrence Ferguson, like, let's say Tucker Kraft, like, and the way he was able to do some stuff. Now, that cooled down as the season went on, but I would see him in a same kind of range of outcomes, and a situation where I expect that Panthers team to be behind a lot and them in catch-up mode. And I think that we could see him have games with, we talked about earlier, with that kind of 6-7 reception games, and I think he is able to put up a lot of yards in the ground after he has the ball in his hands. So I am quite bullish on what he could do.
Makes sense. So we're picking here, and the 2 players, I think we want a running back here. I think we want to be done at running back. the two players I would be looking at would be like Brashard Smith and Blake Corum.
I would be kind of between I'd be between Smith and Devin Neal here if I'm looking at running back.
Okay. Let's do Smith then, seeing as he's the one that we have in common. I like Devin Neal as well. I really liked him in college. And maybe I'm overreacting to them at picking up that extra running back in Cam Akers. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that did give me a little bit of worry in terms of like, what does it signal? Like, have they seen something that like, okay, we're gonna need a couple more bodies at running back because these guys need work. Who we have need work.
I think they're just a team that the whole the whole organization needs work. But like, Cam Akers, it's just like he's going to work his way around. He's going to be taken in. Sometimes around this time, they're going to have people working in just even for reps and things like that.
Right, and I hope that's I hope he's just another body.
Yeah,
I hope that's the only reason.
There's a good chance that is the case. So in terms of now, we're looking at the overall roster. We have 2 quarterbacks, 7 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 3 tight ends. We have 3 selections left. We're done at running back. I think we're done at quarterback. I would like 1 more tight end, 2 more wide receivers. We'll see how we play out. We have Harold Fanning, Cole Kmet in the queue, two that we had kind of talked through there. Pat Bryant is somebody who may come up in this range as well. There's quite a few veterans in here that I just think are probably done and dusted. And then there's names that I like. We can say like a Jalen Coker, for example, or Jalen Noel potentially. But there's
a lot of kind of veterans who they play in the NFL.
Yeah, they're NFL players. They're in the player pool. Harold Fanning does go, so maybe we will be looking here at a Cole Kmet if he makes it back to us. He's a second player in the QB ADP. Russell Wilson's having a big fall here, so we'll see that. If it's a case that he goes, I'm not all that interested really in a lot of the other tight ends that are available. Me and Sean did a draft recently where we took Noah Fant. Not getting that excited, but was a draft where we got stuck at tight end and we kind of had to make that decision. Pat Bryant, Jalen Coker, they both go back-to-back picks, so that's a little bit tough at the wide receiver position. So then
that is disappointing.
That is a disappointing turn there for us. I think we had to take Smith where we did. We'll look back at the end and see where some of the pivots are, but we're back up on the clock. Cole Kmet continues to fall. I think we can make that decision, get the 4th tight end, because there is a case here where we may be leaning on the tight ends and the flex a considerable portion of the season because of, we have the 5 wide receivers. We get into bye week, so we're going to need some additional depth there. Do you want to?
I think I would be Jalen Noel over Cole Kmet, just because you have those kind of outs where he's just a starter on the team. He's not like the veteran on the way out. But if you're strongly Kmet, I'm happy to do
I'm
that.
not strong. I guess the conversation here becomes, and we don't have a huge amount of time, is looking at the wide receivers that remain available. Let's Eric Allamore, A.O. Manor. It's always hard for me to say that one. He would be the target I would have later on. Now, he may not come back, but I'm adding him to the queue. Like, he's a player I would be looking at here in the next pick, or Jalen Noel. I think I would play the risk here that Noel might get back to us. It's always risky to play the push around, but we'll see if that works out for us. Noel by ADP to pull up the ADP queue here. And when you're on the RotoViz site, you can filter this by the date and see the different drafts. I like to pull it up here. It doesn't have to be by the draft grid, but I find that very much easier for me to work the way through. We took Cole Kmet right kind of there where he'll be. Usually in the last week or so, Jalen Noel has gone 1 pick ahead of Kmet. That's the other thing. The ADP that will be on the FFPC site is from the entire duration of the contest, whereas you can set this up to, if there's a player that signs, you can see how the move is. Jalen Coker, I was surprised by. He does usually go in the 20th round, went in the 18th. But when you get into this range, like I mentioned earlier, going and getting the guys you want to get on your roster is the way to play it. A.O. Manor usually goes in the 20th round. For me now, he becomes a priority pick if he gets back to us in the 19th round. Any other names that you're kind of, sometimes you get to this point, you're scrambling to try and be like, which direction am I going?
Yeah. So
if we had and passed on some of the running backs, like that's just why I like pushing the running backs a little bit sometimes on them picks, is like Trevor Etienne goes, and there's quite a few running backs you can say, Taj Brooks is after going a couple of picks ago, where you're looking at potential standalone value, but also real contingency upside.
Yeah, so I like her queue here where it's Jalen Noel. Happy to do Devin Neal as well.
I would now, if it works out, Devin Neal's top of the queue, so he's not coming back after this. But for me, back-to-back wide receivers would be the play. And then I guess the part I would mention on that is Jalen Noel at the moment. You'll obviously have injuries and things could happen, but he's going to be behind Higgins most likely and Collins, whereas Ayoman or like there's Ridley there, there's Lockett. Like there's a chance that he works his way into the regular rotation. And as I say, that Jalen Noel went off the board one pick before. So
yeah, I'm happy to do I am Manor.
Yeah.
So we're doing them here, and Noel is gone. But in terms of like their place in the depth chart,
yeah,
Jalen Noel did go a lot higher than I am Manor, which kind of indicates that the Texans feel better about him than the Titans do about Iomanor.
Yep. That's true, but that also might mean that, and it could be the case, like I'm saying Ridley's in front of him and Lockett's in front of him. I feel like Lockett, is long past his best days, but there's a chance that I was going to say Jalen Noel might be a beyond 2025 pick, but at the, it might be Christian Kirk's there this year with the two rookies, right, and then they bypass.
No, that is a chance. But even when you're talking about a player like this, that where, hey, like feel good about them for 2026. Yep. Well, sometimes those moments happen for them sooner than you expected.
Yeah, we often talk about like players arriving early, and like these are the bets in this 19th, 20th round that you want to take rather than like some of the veteran names that are going in this range. And like I know you're saying that there's an ADP difference between the two of them, but like Ayomanor went in the 4th round. There's not like it was a 7th round pick at the same time. So and depending on how teams are set up, the differences in terms of their boards maybe like not that much.
Right. No, you're right. That's fair.
Yeah. So like it's a 3rd round pick versus a 4th round pick, but in terms of like it's the 79th pick of the draft versus the 136th. So like there's still like there's a substantial gap between.
Did you say that the difference between the 70th pick and the draft, 79 and 100?
Yeah, so it's basically like the start of the 3rd and the end of the 4th. But that is like it's
okay. Yeah, you're right. Those are basically the same.
Well, I said they were basically the same at the start, but I also said that the team's board may be different. But like technically that's correct. A 3rd and a 4th round pick, but also that can be up to, basically 64 picks.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that it's like day 2, that's normally a good cutoff point. I when you said Iomanor was a 4th round pick, that made me think, oh, he went earlier than I expected, and then you said 136. I'm like, okay, I think my memory was a little bit off, but not that off.
Yeah, we're close enough. We'll say it was a good pick. But yeah, I do think the Texans and Noel's probably been underrated for how we think that offense is going to do. I like to see those offenses that may take that big jump forward this season, and I think the Titans with Cam Ward could potentially be one of those offenses where you're like, yeah, this team is disgusting, and then we're like next year we're like, yeah, I want to have more of that offense. But he's kind of one that I would like to, you're buying in on the ground floor for that team, and I think there's an interesting potential ceiling on it in terms of how it may play out. I to be clear, I'm drafting Noel and Ayomanor, but it was just there in the tiebreak situation. Sometimes on the clock, you're trying to see which direction you want to go. I think I'll be level in exposure to the two of those guys. We're into the last round now. After that, we did have Gadsden at tight end went. We got Adonai Mitchell, Noah Gray, Devin Neal, Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Hopkins, Elijah Moore, Yoshi Voss. Any like high upside, high reward, rookie veteran that you want to put in here? This is the area where, you know, you could have got Puka Nacua in his rookie season. Who can we draft here? Is it Troy Franklin?
I think it is Troy Franklin, but
do you know if Dontavian Wicks grew hands this offseason because he's still available?
He actually he was bitten by the spider from Spider-Man, and now his hands are webby.
I don't think we'll do it, but you know, I do think a pick that in some of these drafts could turn out to be interesting would be Jalen Milroe. He's going in the 20th round of these drafts. Michael Mayer went one pick ahead of us. We're back on the clock. Is there any names outside of the Broncos? I think the Broncos, to add a little bit of a late round stack to build in some of that upside.
Yeah, I think that's our I think that's the direction we should go.
We did take Jerry Jeudy. Deontay Johnson got kicked off multiple teams last year. He's a player that doesn't get selected in this format. Like, would you rather have a Deontay Johnson who could have 70 plus receptions or a Troy Franklin? Just pitching it out there, just in case.
Yeah. You're really working hard to make me feel bad about this Troy Franklin pick.
Well, he's somebody though who, like, if we get positive news out in the next 6 weeks and he's paired with Joe Flacco at quarterback, like Deontay Johnson, 80 plus receptions could be interesting. You drafted Troy Franklin.
I'm like, we're 15 seconds left. I could normally do the thing where somebody else filibusters and auto picks. I was like, no, I'm going to be upfront. I'm taking Troy Franklin.
I think you were afraid. You were afraid there that I was going to make the click, I think was what your fear was.
So, Deontay Johnson, I think you're right that with the right situation that he could try to like revive, rehabilitate his career. Having said that, some of the quotes from him last year where he was like, hey, I'm not really getting any snaps. I feel really cold, so I don't want to play.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, you can kind of make the case for yourself that, hey, that's not going to happen this year. His head's going to be screwed on right, all that kind of stuff. But I kind of do think that once somebody shows you that they have not got the right mentality that you want, that doesn't change.
Yeah,
like,
no, and again, it's more some of these picks, especially when we're co-drafting. I like to do like due diligence conversations of like, am I missing something here?
Right.
And but if we look at, like, I've pulled up here, you know, the Stat Explorer for Deontay Johnson. If we go back as far as week 1, 2022, which is going back quite a amount of time now, 3 seasons, there is only 12% of the weeks that are wide receiver one. He had one wide receiver 1 week season where he had a 20-point game in 2022 and 2023. He had 1 week where he had a 22-point game was the high mark. Last year, which was an interesting start, he has 3 weeks last season and just a bizarre overall season when we look through like week 3, week 4, week 6. So through 6 weeks, he has a 4-point game, a 4-point game, a 26-point game, a 21-point game, a 6-point game, and a 19-point game. And then it just like completely fell off a cliff. There was multiple teams and so on. So there was some things happening in the opening 6 weeks, but
right.
And there's enough
he has
noise.
Strong NFL talent.
Yes,
like,
but
he's clearly talented.
If we look back now, it's a multiple year drop off. So season 1, season 2, and season 3, there's some good stuff in there. But season 3, season 4, season 4, 5, and 6, there's a lot of like problems. And the problem is then when we look at that, you get into a situation where like, when is the rebound happening? The likelihood is the rebound isn't happening.
Right.
So we have finished out the draft. For people watching on video, they'll see my camera's having some trouble there, so I've had to switch camera views. Special behind the scenes camera look here to finish off the show. Connor, we have finished our draft. We get Troy Franklin there at the end, and some Deontay Johnson conversation to see it up. But it's 2 quarterbacks, 7 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 4 tight ends. Kind of like when we start this, you're kind of looking to have that, 7 wide receivers and the 4 tight ends, and you may have like a 6 RB team. You may have 6 wide receivers. You may have 3 quarterbacks. We kind of end that overall range. The wide receivers were Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Rashee Rice, Jerry Jeudy, Jaden Reed. We finish off then with back-to-back A.O. Manor and Troy Franklin. QBs, Bo Nix, Jared Goff. Tight end, Sam Laporta, Johnny Smith, Tavion Sanders, Cole Kmet. And then at the running back position, we have R.J. Harvey, Tootin, Ramondre Stevenson, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Dylan Sampson, and Brashad Smith. My question, I guess, that goes to you here overall is fading on the roster, and then we'll get in a little bit to potential pivot points. We do get RJ Harvey and Troy Franklin along with Bo Nix. We get Sam Laporta along with Jared Goff. I mentioned at the start the format and the final, and I've been in an 87-team final. Not as important to have like major stacks, I feel, and it's beneficial, but not as essential as, when you're in a monster underdog kind of situation there trying to get through those groups. Let me know your thoughts, and then I'll ask you about some kind of potential pivot points.
So what's my thoughts on our roster overall? So we're a pretty balanced roster. We obviously hit the ground running pretty hard at receiver, tight end. We did get RJ Harvey up top at running back, and then we finished with 7 running backs. So we certainly paid justice to the importance of running back position there. I like that we combined the likes of RJ Harvey, Tootin, Sampson, Smith with Ramondre, Ray Davis, and Algier. So even though we're taking Ramondre, who we don't normally target, we got him at a discount. We're taking Ray Davis, we feel good about. And Algier, I think we did a good job of maximizing and complementing the profiles there. Tight end, like that, even though we didn't get the kind of like the big tree that we normally target, we did get Laporta, we did get Jonnu. And then after that, I think we're kind of Sanders and Kmet. I think that's a little bit iffy, but certainly upside cases for both of them. And then, I think that I guess quarterback we kind of got our 2 in the window, and then I think that's a good segue into pivot points, where we did have the opportunity to take a quarterback in the 10th round, and we didn't do that. We took Tootin instead, which is helpful.
Yeah.
We and then it swung back around in the 12th. We could have taken Jordan Love, and we didn't, and we took Ramondre instead. Even with the benefit of hindsight, I think those were the right picks, but those are kind of our major pivot points, our major kind of decision points where you could have gone either way.
Yeah, I think if we look and take it all into consideration, so we take Bo Nix, who we did kind of consider at the Jaden Reed pick in the 8th round, but I guess where I would be looking is I'm not looking to get Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Jordan Love altogether. So the question will be at the Bo Nix pick at the 906. We could have potentially passed on him and taken Josh Downs there would be a potential option. We did talk about
Jordan Mason was the one that you had suggested.
Yep, they were the 2. You could. So basically, you'd be Downs or Mason, right? Take Bo Nix off the board, but then it would be the case when you're taking that Tootin pick. Is there a squeeze on you? Because although we took Bo Nix and then the 4 quarterbacks went after us, are we going to say we need to take the QB there? And Bo Nix may have given us the ability to take Tootin and Goff, like get Goff around the turn. So there's always going to be like hard to tell the difference in that. So when we had Goff and Nix, I think Jordan Love doesn't really become a pick then on this roster that you're going to make. So Stevenson with the whole 4 pick range there in consideration, that is still the way that I would play it. So you could have passed on Goff if you wanted to see if Love would have come back instead of Stevenson. And then at that pick, you're probably looking at potentially J.K. Dobbins or Luther Burden. I think I mentioned Burden as the potential option. But again, I don't think there's a huge differential in those 1v1s across the board. And I think, it's worked out fine. If we had had Love and Goff, or we had Nix and Love, I would be good with all them combinations. But I think over the course of 4 rounds, I think it worked out pretty good. One of the areas then, I think we talked about Algier and Mims. That was a conversation we were having. Obviously, you were very confident you would get your boy Troy Franklin in the last round. So that worked out. We got another wide receiver. But when I talked about the Mims pick, I was saying there's only a certain amount of wide receivers in that range that I'm kind of intrigued by or wanting to draft. And that was kind of my main conversation point there, rather than in general to draft Marvin Mims. I'm still interested in drafting Quentin Johnson a little bit. He went in the 16th round. He could have been a conversation, but he was also the pick that went 1 pick ahead of Jatavion Sanders. So if we wanted him, we would have had to take him at the Dylan Sampson pick. The Dylan Sampson pick for me felt like a running back pick. That was where we passed on Kate Otten in the end up after some discussion. Marshawn Lloyd, Jarquez Hunter, Braylon Allen would all have been other running backs that have been open to, but you mentioned the case for Dylan Sampson, so we take him there. So I'm happy that we passed up there to Otten and still got the other 2. I would say while there is, red flags with the Sanders and Kmet picks, like when I'm looking at the tight ends that I'm drafting kind of from round 13 onwards, it's kind of, maybe a Conco comes into it because of the athleticism, but I'm really looking there at like Sanders, maybe a Theo Johnson, but Terrence Ferguson in particular. Cole Kmet is a backup target after him and Fanning go, maybe Gadsden. But they are kind of, they are my picks. I'm hoping to add them as number 3 and number 4 after having added 2 prior, which we had done in this draft. So there isn't a lot of other pivots like that I would have made. I'm not like really disappointed about any of the other wide receivers we missed out on, because in that 14 through 18 round range in general, I'm not targeting a lot of them at ADP. The Coker and Bryant picks back to back was a little bit disappointing. If one of them had made it to the Cole Kmet pick, I probably would have leaned that way, but it worked out nice enough the way we were able to get the 2 wide receivers at the end. I did want to mention the team that in 12. I did mention that they started Devin Etchen, Derrick Henry, Josh Allen, Kenneth Walker, Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram, Jalen Warren. So no wide receivers through 7. They did then take Khalil Shakir, then Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams. So they had 1 wide receiver through 10 rounds. They then took Luther Burden to get up to 2, but then they took Trevor Lawrence. So they had 2 through 12, but did finish the draft out and a streak of yellow, all wide receiver, with Hollywood Brown, Cedric Tillman, Wan'Dale Robinson, Xavier Leggett, Josh Palmer, Diami Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Elijah Moore. Connor, have you ever drafted a team that way? They did end up with 10.
No, I never drafted a team. I there's been some times where I've been forced into drafting teams that aren't that far away from it, where I take a little bit more running backs than I normally intend to early, and then I'm just catching up at receiver. What this team reminds me of a little bit is the hyper fragile teams that were popular early in the underdog, where people would take running backs and then just hammer receiver. I guess the concerns I would have with this kind of build is, yes, you've somewhat caught up at receiver by virtue of having 10 of them, but then you've had to make a real sacrifice there in Travis Kelce and Evan Ingram being your only tight ends, which I would see as being extremely suboptimal in FFPC, given what we talked about, tight end premium and the roster settings.
Yeah, and there's 20 rounds. So generally, we talked about it. We did do 4. Usually, you want like a minimum of 3, but ideally 4 in this particular format.
Yeah, and especially if you don't have one of the top guys, like it becomes a real priority.
And the one thing I would like, I'm not this team. Like, we'll see how it goes throughout the course of the season. It's just a unique build, which is mainly the reason I wanted to highlight it. But like I like Jalen Warren, but you get into Travis Etienne, who I think there's still an upside case for in round 9, based on what we also talked about when we took Tootin, as like, there's a case that maybe the team isn't all that way and on Tootin if things don't go well early on. But Etienne has been like on a slope the last couple of years, and then Javonte Williams has been in a similar situation. Both of them obviously have a history of knee injuries, unfortunately, which has been tough. And you're kind of hoping that they have that J.K. Dobbins,
Revival.
comeback. But the problem is, like, you mentioned Jaden Blue and the news around him, but there's every chance we get to week 6 and Blue has passed Williams on the depth chart and Tootin has passed Etienne, and then you have added, I guess, like, it would be like, people probably say this about us and wide receivers at times, but you go to excess and then you get caught out. But this here team is interesting. I'm interested to see how it goes the rest of the way, but I've never drafted a team. I've probably drafted a team in reverse of this, where
Right.
but not this way. But yeah, I really enjoyed the draft, Connor. We always have kind of a similar range of players that we're looking to, but we had a couple. We were able to manage our way through it. Hopefully, people enjoyed the conversation. We tried to work in some of the stuff, maybe more so early in the draft, where we're working through the rankings and that. It is obviously at the top end of the draft, sometimes between up onto kind of round 9, where a lot of the differentiations and trying to figure out your draft capital on the rankings versus the ADP. But Connor, we are going to see this team charge its way to the final. We've had a team in the final the last couple of years. We always have had a sweat together. So hopefully we get another sweat with this team. We'll see how it all plays out. You have been drafting quite a few teams in this and sending me screenshots, and I've been envious of some of the builds you've been able to put together. So hopefully you have a couple of teams there again in the sprint at the end of it all. But anything coming up you want to?
No. Last year I would kind of like hint at stuff, like tease at stuff that I'm working on. I have nothing to promise. I'll try and get something out, but nothing to signpost.
Under promise, over deliver. That's the way to
Yeah.
play it. That's a very Irish
Sure.
thing of you, Connor, to do.
No, I think it's just a smart thing. Well, last year I was like, I don't even think I was over promising. I wasn't promising much at all, but I still under delivered.
We'll see how it goes. This people don't expect anything, but it will be great when it happens. We'll see what happens. But we may have, myself and Connor will be doing more teams, probably some slow drafts, maybe not any more recordings. We'll not promise anything, Connor, but who knows?
No,
maybe,
yeah. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. But that I know Connor has some travels coming up, so we'll wish him well in his travels, and we'll hopefully wish him that this team gets to the top of the board. I've had some shows over the last couple of weeks. I mentioned the one with Ben Gretsch earlier, 2 shows last week. We talked through. We had a fun conversation where we even talked through some like AI technology in the fantasy space, which was fun. We talked through some things that people misunderstand about fantasy, and then we talked about the best pick from every round of fantasy football drafts. So if you want to go and check that out, it's up on the RotoViz Fantasy Football podcast feed. Myself and Sean Siegel obviously have a load of RotoViz overtime shows that you can listen to, and then I am recording with Denny Carter on Monday. That show will probably be available by the time you hear this one. I'll be talking through some fun topics with him as well, so do check that out. Make sure you subscribe. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on socials at Overtime Ireland. My co-drafter today was Dreco Conor O'Driscoll. You can follow him at Dreco Out. And until we are back, have a good one.